Brian, are you talking?
Yeah, I was gonna. I figured maybe it was just me because I was in my car. I've been having audio issues.
Oh, I feel stupid. Yeah, I was just rambling away there.
Well, I just looked back down. I was like, it looks like he's looking at us. I think maybe he was talking. I was just about to chime in. Thank you, Mimi.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Monday Night Book Club call tonight. We're going over chapter 12 of Atomic Habits, the law of least effort. As always, feel free to jump in with any questions you have, any connections that you have between what we're reading in your life, either as a reseller or even your personal life. Any annotations maybe you've made, just anything at all. Feel free to jump in, either live or drop any of those comments, questions into the chat as well. These chapters have been short, so what I've been doing, and I guess we'll keep doing for the time being, is just kind of actually reading this chapter, and then we could talk about anything that relates. Before I get started, does anybody have anything from last week or anything they want to start the night off with? All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Feel free to stop me at any time, guys. All right. In his award-winning book, Guns, Germs, and Still, anthropologist and biologist Jared Diamond points out a few simple facts. He points out a simple fact. Different continents have different shapes. At first glance, the statement seems rather obvious and unimportant, but it turns out to have a profound impact on human behavior. The primary axis of the Americas runs from north to south. That is, the landmass of North and South America tends to be tall and thin rather than wide and fat. The same is generally true for Africa. Meanwhile, the landmass that makes up Europe, Asia, and the Middle East is the opposite. This massive stretch of land tends to be more east-west in shape. According to Diamond, this difference in shape played a significant role in the spread of agriculture over the centuries. When agriculture began to spread around the globe, farmers had an easier time expanding along east-west routes rather than along north-south ones. This is because locations along the same latitude generally share similar climates, amounts of sunlight and rainfall, and changes in season. These factors allowed farmers in Europe and Asia to domesticate a few crops and grow them along the entire stretch of land from France to China. By comparison, the climate varies greatly when traveling from north to south. Just imagine how different the weather is in Florida, that's where Tech's at, compared to Canada. You can be the most talented farmer in the world, but it won't help you grow Florida oranges in the Canadian winter. Snow is a poor substitute for soil. In order to spread crops along north-south routes, farmers would need to find and domesticate new plants whenever the climate changed. As a result, agriculture spread 2 to 3 times faster across Asia and Europe than it did up and down the Americas. Over the span of centuries, the small differences had a very big impact. Increased food productions allowed for more rapid population growth. With more people, these cultures were able to build stronger armies and were better equipped to develop new technologies. The changes started out small. A crop that spread slightly farther, a population that grew slightly faster, but compounded into substantial differences over time. And I think that's kind of key right there. Obviously, that's going to relate to what we're talking about, that the small changes compound over time into big gains. The spread of agriculture provides an example of the third law of behavior change on a global scale. Conventional wisdom holds that motivation is the key to habit change. Maybe if you really wanted it, you'd actually do it. But the truth is, our real motivation is to be lazy and to do what is convenient. And despite what the latest productivity bestseller will tell you, this is a smart strategy, not a dumb one. Energy is precious, and the brain is wired to conserve it whenever possible. It is human nature to follow the law of least effort, which states that when deciding between two similar options, People will naturally gravitate toward the option that requires the least amount of work. For example, expanding your farm to the east, where you can grow the same crops, rather than heading north where the climate is different. Out of all the possible actions we could take, the one that is realized is the one that delivers the most value for the least effort. We are motivated to do what is easy. And I like kind of highlighted that part. The one that is realized is the one that delivers the most value for the least effort. We are motivated to do what is easy. Every action requires a certain amount of energy. The more energy required, the less likely it is to occur. If your goal is to do 100 push-ups every day, that's a lot of energy. In the beginning, when you're motivated and excited, you can muster the strength to get started, but after a few days, such a massive effort feels exhausting. And obviously, like I think this relates directly to listing. Like if you want to, very quickly increase your listing habit, like your motivation, I think can allow you to do that for a short period of time, but I don't think it's sustainable. Meanwhile, sticking to the habit of doing 1 push-up per day requires almost no energy to get started. And the less energy a habit requires, the more likely it is to occur. Look at any behavior that fills up much of your life, and you'll see that it can be performed with very low levels of motivation. Habits like scrolling on our phone, checking email, watching TV, steal so much of our time because they can be performed almost without effort. They are remarkably convenient. In a sense, every habit is just an obstacle to getting what you really want. Dieting is an obstacle to getting fit. Meditation is an obstacle to feeling calm. Journaling is an obstacle to thinking clearly. You don't actually want the habit itself. What you really want is the outcome the habit delivers. The greater the obstacle, that is, the more difficult the habit, the more friction there is between you and your desired end state. This is why it is crucial to make your habits so easy that you'll do them even when you don't feel like it. If you can make your good habits more convenient, you'll be more likely to follow through on them. But what about all the moments when we seem to do the opposite? If we're all so lazy, then how do you explain people accomplishing hard things like raising a child, or starting a business, or climbing Mount Everest? Certainly, you're capable of doing very hard things. The problem is that some days you feel like doing the hard work, and some days you feel like giving in. On the tough days, it's crucial to have as many things working in your favor as possible that you can overcome the challenges life naturally throws your way. The less friction you face, the easier it is for your stronger self to emerge. The idea behind make it easy is not to only do easy things. The idea is to make it as easy as possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. And that's the end of the first section of that chapter. Anybody have any thoughts from that part?
Hi, Brian, and everyone. I really like this chapter because I find it sometimes very liberating to not guilt trip people into saying that, hey, because you're looking for an easier way out, you're being lazy. It's actually, a natural evolution. And I find it that usually people can spend an awful amount of time sometimes trying to find the easiest way out of things. Not necessarily because they are lazy, and we shouldn't feel bad about it. Because the minute we accept who we are is the moment we can actually start working towards being who we want to be.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of refreshing to hear this and think about it, that that we're just kind of designed to be lazy in a way, to conserve energy. And I thought it was kind of interesting hearing all those habits, those negative habits, the phone, the TV, and those are all very easy. They're easy to perform. And I like that last line. The idea is to make it as easy as possible in the moment to do things that pay off in the long run. Like when I read this first part, it made me think of I mean, I think that's why niching down is partly so powerful. It's easier to sell just one thing or one category. If you're, if you're researching and listing China, and then you're doing a VCR, then you turn around and do a piece of jewelry you don't know anything about, and then you try to list a pair of shoes. I mean, that's exhausting. And then if you don't have your setups, but if you're listing, like if you just sell all jeans and shorts, there's only so many different types. There's only so many brands that you sell, that it's easier. You don't have to spend the mental energy.
Yeah, that's funny. Even like when you were talking about because I thought that was a cool part, talking about the crops east to west opposed to like north to south. That doesn't mean that somebody stuck in a specific area can't do good. Like look at Florida oranges or Georgia peaches or whatever. They just chose to capitalize in what they know. They're not trying. They know they can't grow the same crops elsewhere, so they just niche to that one crop.
Yeah, that's a good point, Landon. That's their geographic advantage. We talk about that a lot. Like what's your local advantage compared to people in different places? And then you export it, right? Like before the supply chain was broken, that's how it worked. That we just ship out what we produce, what we have, like Florida oranges, Mexican avocados, whatever it is. You rely on that. It's kind of interesting. Like when you think about like history in the broader terms, like when Cortez and the explorers came to what's now Mexico, like in the early 1500s, Europe at that point, once they came out of the Dark Ages, it was because of agriculture. They were able to grow enough food where, then you'd have to spend all your energy just being nomadic, hunting and gathering food. It allows time to, with the crops, you have enough food, allowed reading to develop, and art, and then exploration and all these different things. And then exploration and colonization. But all of that comes from the fact that they were able to grow more crops. And I never really thought about the East-West. Like if you look at Europe and Asia, like it's such a large landmass, and it's wide and fat. So those latitudes allowed for those crops to grow. Where North and South America, we're north and south, and there's such a difference in climates. Like even here in Texas, if you go several hundred miles to Colorado or even further north, the climate's totally different. It's kind of interesting how the small things can add up. All right, so I think the beginning is just kind of prefaced with a global idea to get our brains kind of like what Dana was doing to think about this. And I think now we're going to probably get to the more practical point. The next section is how to achieve more with less effort. It says, imagine you are holding a garden hose that is bent in the middle. Some water can flow through, but not very much. If you want to increase the rate at which water passes through the hose, you have two options. The first option is to crank up the valve and force more water out. The second option is to simply remove the bend in the hose and let water flow through naturally. Trying to pump up your motivation to stick with a hard habit is like trying to force water through a bent hose. And see, I'm guilty of this. Like before I read this book, like I used to always just try to motivate myself. I'd watch a lot of videos, a lot of, think of like the old Rocky Balboa, just get pumped up. But the problem with that is motivation only lasts for a short period of time. So I think that's interesting when they're talking about this. You can do it, but it requires a lot of effort and increases the tension in your life. Meanwhile, making your habits simple and easy is like removing the bend in the hose. Rather than trying to overcome the friction in your life, you reduce it. One of the most effective ways to reduce the friction associated with your habits is to practice environment design. In Chapter 6, we discussed environment design as a method for making cues more obvious, but you can also optimize your environment to make actions easier. For example, when deciding where to practice a new habit, it is best to choose a place that is already along the path of your daily routine. Habits are easy to build when they fit into the flow of your life. You are more likely to go to the gym if it is on your way to work because stopping doesn't add much friction to your lifestyle. By comparison, if the gym is off the path of your normal commute, even by just a few blocks, now you're going out of your way to get there. Perhaps even more effective is reducing the friction within your home or office. Too often we try to start habits in high friction environments. We try to follow a strict diet while we are out to dinner with friends. We try to write a book in a chaotic household. We try to concentrate while using a smartphone filled with distractions. It doesn't have to be this way. We can remove the point of friction that holds us back. This is precisely what electronics manufacturers in Japan began to do in the 1970s. In an article published in the New Yorker titled "Better All the Time," James Surowiecki writes, Japanese firms emphasized what came to be known as lean production, relentlessly looking to remove waste of all kinds from the production process, down to redesigning workspaces so workers didn't have to waste time twisting and turning to reach their tools. The result was that Japanese factories were more efficient and Japanese products were more reliable than American ones. In 1974, service calls for American-made color televisions were 5 times as common as the Japanese TVs. By 1979, it took American workers 3 times as long to assemble their sets. I like to refer to this strategy as addition by subtraction. The Japanese companies looked for every point of friction in the manufacturing process and eliminated it. As they subtracted wasted effort, they added customers and revenue. Similarly, when we remove the points of friction that sap our time and energy, we can achieve more with less effort. This is one reason tidying up can feel so good. We are simultaneously moving forward and lightening the cognitive load our environment places on us. If you look at the most habit-forming products, you'll notice that one of the things these goods and services do best is remove little bits of friction from your life. Meal delivery services reduce the friction of shopping for groceries. Dating apps reduce the friction of making social introductions. Ride-sharing services reduce the friction of getting across town. Text messaging reduces the friction of sending a letter in the mail. Like a Japanese television manufacturer redesigning their workspace to reduce wasted motion, successful companies design their products to automate, eliminate, or simplify as many steps as possible. They reduce the number of fields on each form. They pare down the number of clicks required to create an account. They deliver their products with easy to understand directions or ask their customers to make fewer choices. When the first voice-activated speakers were released, products like Google Home, Amazon Echo, and Apple HomePod, I asked a friend what he liked about the product he had purchased. He said it was just easier to say, play some country music, than to pull out his phone, open the music app, and pick a playlist. Of course, just a few years earlier, having unlimited access to music in your pocket was a remarkable frictionless behavior compared to driving to the store and buying a CD. Business is a never-ending quest to deliver the same results in an easier fashion. Similar strategies have been used effectively by governments. When the British government wanted to increase tax collection rates, they switched from sending citizens to a web page where the tax forms could be downloaded to linking directly to the form. Reducing that one step in the process increased the response rate from 19.2% to 23.4%. For a country like the UK, those percentage points represent millions in tax revenue. The central idea is to create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. the central idea is to create an environment where the right thing is as easy to do as possible. Much of the battle of building better habits comes down to finding ways to reduce the friction associated with our good habits and increase the friction associated with the bad ones. I think that last paragraph's really kind of the key takeaway from all that. All right, there's a lot there. All right, anybody got any thoughts on all that? Dana?
I actually found it very interesting that they were mentioning that reducing steps. And another key argument for that would be the fact that the more steps you have, the more chances are for you to make errors. I think that that's usually what stops people when they're dealing with official paperwork and filling out stuff. The more things you have to do, the higher the chances of you committing an error or making a mistake. The less steps you have to take, the clearer the process becomes, the easier it is for your brain to actually do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm just thinking, how important would it be for all of us to have a very, enough steps to fit on one hand, so less than 5 for everything we do? And how easy would it be to list, to pick, to do stuff if we decide to, spend some time literally improving the actual process of it, the system that we use, and make that one thing and just improve one thing at a time. It's inventory, it's storage, it's photography, listing. 4 things we take out as much as possible and just break it down to the essential. How easy and simple would that make it, and less complicated for all of us?
Yeah, I think looking at the environment, like for those positive habits, reducing friction, like what you're saying, addition by subtraction, and it could be like being aware of the steps we're taking. Like Tech talks a lot about pivoting with photographs versus taking steps. Like what are some ways, like that low-hanging fruit, and I think that's where timing yourself or even videotaping yourself. Like I now, at least once a week, I don't time myself every day, but I time myself. It's like when it raises awareness, and then you start to look at closely, like, where am I wasting time? What are some things I could do to eliminate that? And then, with the bad habits, to increase the friction. Like I know we went grocery shopping, like we're trying to eat better, and so we didn't buy any junk food this week because I know if it's in my pantry, like I'm weak. In a moment of weakness, I'll give in. But if it's not there, the friction of having to drive somewhere to get it is a barrier from me driving to Brahms, the drive-through, to get that fudge brownie sundae, which is so amazing. Does anybody have any examples? And I like how they talked about and I know Chris has talked about this quite a bit, like this idea of the Japanese lean model of eliminating and really analyzing your workspaces. It's kind of powerful.
I actually have talked about this on a couple of calls. I don't remember where, but I recently got a chair with wheels on the bottom, so that when I'm doing handbags in my light box versus clothing on my wall, I can roll from the light box over to where my measurement board is, over to the bin. It's like this small little circle. It's definitely in line with Tech's pivot. The layout is more efficient because I can roll easily. I have found, though, that when we're talking about steps and improvement, is that if I put the puffer bag with all my stuffing for the bags in the wrong location, my wheels will hit it, and that stops my process. So it's like all these tiny little details that, you know, it's like, who wants to write them all down? Well, the fact is you have to write them all down. And like you said earlier, Brian, being aware of every single thing that you're doing so that you can see its efficiency or inefficiency, and then try to gravitate towards making it into that habit. It's that small little thing, like my wheels hitting that puffer bag 20 times. Like, I should have moved it the first time, but I was enjoying the wheels on the chair and I wasn't thinking about the efficiency of it. And I think that it's really easy to think you're cruising along and you're forgetting that there are better ways to do it. And I'd like to get out of work a little bit earlier. As much as I enjoy rolling around in that chair, it's going to lose its allure pretty quick if I keep taking 4 hours to, you know, photograph 25 items. That's another whole story. But I was just saying, the wheels were one small little thing that seemed to improve it, but now there's a bunch of other stuff that's making the process inefficient.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to actually, and I think just to develop the mindset to analyze these things. Like, I know for myself, before being in this group, I never did that. And like today, like this, for the first half of the day, I went sourcing, and it was a very efficient sourcing trip too. I filled up my Prius with clothing. And then I got back, and I got up early, did my shipping, got back. And I know the old me, like if I went sourcing and I didn't have a draft, like I used my draft bank Sunday, like, so my draft bank is never ending. Like, I know I need to get it built up. And I think I like conflicted with trying, like I'm up to 30 listings a day. But now before I grow anymore, I need to build up that draft bank. But the point I guess I'm trying to make, like the old me, I would have been so exhausted from sourcing that I may not have listed, or I would have only listed a few things, but I got my 30 up today. And I think I'm not as efficient as I need to be, but I'm way more efficient than I was a year or a little bit over a year ago. So I think, I don't know, I just think this mindset of being aware and looking for ways to become more efficient, like what you're talking about, Jen, I think that's a good approach. And, you know, I know Tex talked a lot about it. Like, he's got the rubber mat where they stand. Like, his is very streamlined. His addition was to get rid of measurements, where I haven't done that because I'm using a vertical flat lay. So for me, I've tied it up. I have my vertical flat lay here. Right beside it, I have a table where I do my measurements, where I've got it as lean as I can at this moment. But to get even leaner would require doing what do you call it? The listings on the ground.
But actually, I think that's almost, if we really want to be as efficient as we say we want to be, I mean, if we really truly want to do that, I mean, it is a question of evaluating what we're doing now and how we're doing it. I mean, if we aren't timing ourselves, I'm always super impressed, because you post every day in Facebook. And quite frankly, I don't post because I suck. So I'm not going to put that up there to let everybody see. But the fact is, the consistency of evaluating your process is the only way you're going to improve it. It's the only way you're going to see it. I'm convinced of that. It's like the only way I'm ever going to get better at roller skating is to see myself on video. I have to video myself every single lesson. I can't think I'm going to remember how I look, because I never saw how I looked. When the minute I see it, that one little thing changes the game every time I do a video of myself skating. So it's the same thing with this, I think. And I timed myself today, and it is extremely painful, and I will not tell anyone how long it took me, but I did time myself. And I'm like, okay, that was better than yesterday. but you know, it's just, it's woeful. So I like this, because I think I know that I don't like to look at how I'm doing things wrong. I don't like to look at it. I like to just do it. And I think I posted in the chat earlier, I have historically equated arduous effort with effectiveness, and it's just not true. It's just not true. Hard work doesn't mean shit. It's the actual outcome and productivity that means something. And I mean, my family brought us up that way, that you got to work hard. That doesn't mean anything. You've got to work efficient and smart. And that's why I joined up with Tech and Chris, is because they seem to be efficient and smart. And they this proof in the pudding. And that's what I think this chapter is like hitting home with me for.
No, and I like that introspection. I think like we have to be okay with the progress. Like I'm like you, like when I first started posting those, like I was embarrassed and I hated doing it, but then it just became a habit. I don't even really think about it anymore, but yeah, it's that efficiency. And then if you get the efficiency, then if you put in the same hours, once you're efficient, then the productivity's off the charts.
Well, I hope you keep posting, because I have to say, you know, you're a leader in the group in a lot of ways. So it means something to see it every day, Brian. I mean, you know, when I go in at the end of the day and look through Facebook, because I don't spend a lot of time on there, but I breeze through it once a day and I look forward to seeing that, to see how you did. And I've noticed over the last month, there's been a real big difference in the number of items posted, and the number of draft bank, and then the number of fixing old listings. And it's over the last couple of months, I think. I've just seen a big difference. I mean, you've always had pretty good sales, I think, but I saw a difference in numbers, and it says something to me. It makes me think about mine and makes me realize maybe I need to be paying more attention to that. So continue to be a leader that way, please.
Well, I appreciate it. If it brings anybody any value, to me, it's the accountability, and I like quotes. And but as far as that, yeah, it's just my biggest enemy is squirrel brain. Like I want to do so many things. I see so many niches. Like, oh, I want to do that. I love doing shoes, and I switched to shoes, but like I screwed up the algorithm. And ultimately for me, I sat down and I thought, well, I can find so many clothes for so cheap, and they don't have quite the ASP, but I think the volume makes up for it for me. And then it's these little things that compound. It's fixing these old listings a little bit each day over time, and those begin to sell. And then the new listings are better, and you just get better over time. But I think the mentality, if we accept that mentality of progress, like I could see the pain, like when you're looking at that time, but if you just beat it a couple of seconds, the next time you do it, and over time, that really adds up. So I think that's the mindset of just the progress. They call it a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, like in education, where the old way was, you tell your kid or your students, oh, you're so smart. Well, that doesn't encourage growth or even hard work. That's a static measurement. If you encourage the work, the efficiency, over time, that's going to pay dividends. That positive reinforcement gets the student or your kids to identify with work. And through a long period of time, that habit of working hard, like you were talking about, is going to pay dividends. And then if you link it up with this mindset that we're talking about of efficiency, then it's a whole nother game. I like what Julie's saying. Julie said in yoga, it's called micro adjustments. While you're trying to be so aware of your pose that you keep making micro adjustments to make it more effective. That's a good connection, Julie.
Brian, that's funny that you mentioned the fixed and growth mindset. I just finished the book Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I just finished it just an hour ago. And yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we can be either stuck and just be okay with who we are, or we can believe that everything has like a growth process to it, that we can get better. We just need to have that mindset that, there's gonna be problems in the day, but we can't just dwell in it. We gotta find solutions. And it's that's why I like this group. Back to what Jen was saying, was like, the inspiration that we all go through these little things in life, but it's like the discipline that we see in each other. It's pretty inspiring, and it's just cool to see. I live out in the forest, in the mountains, so I don't really have too many people around me, doing eBay, let alone that. But just to see like what you guys do, and Brian, you too, it's inspiring, and I believe that we're all trying to get to that growth mindset stage. And it's just cool to see that, where we're going to be at a year from now, and like when we look at sales, I think we should look at them year over year, and just like our personal growth in our life. Like, yeah, maybe we'll have a hiccup here and there, but I believe a year from now, if we just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to be significantly better, just have faith.
This chapter talked about energy, and I was thinking, we when we track how we do things, and when I really pay attention to it, because I'm not as self-aware doing this as I'd like to be, but I was noticing today that a thing happened this morning that stopped me dead in my tracks in my process, and I had to solve that problem. It wasn't squirrel brain. It was just something I had to take care of. But it was something I could have avoided if I'd thought it through a little bit more. And it's embarrassing to say, but I had brought my dog to the storage facility with me, like I do quite often. And she took a shit in the storage facility. And it stopped me dead in my track. She's never done it before. And now I can't bring her anymore. But I'm thinking I should never have brought her in the first place. Why did I do that? Of course she's going to get in the way. She's going to want to play with her toys all day. She's going to bark. She's going to, because there's the storage facility manager has a dog as well. And sometimes he takes her and they walk. But it was one of those things where I knew this, but I don't know. I think that it took so much energy to take care of that. I was so embarrassed and all this stuff that by the time I got back to work, I think it took me like 2 hours to finally calm down and not feel embarrassed and mad and like pissed off at myself. And that takes its toll, because I think that happens to me a lot more than I like to admit. And those are the kinds of things that I would like to go away so that I could be done by 12:30 every day. I mean, it's the very reason that I keep going until 10 o'clock at night is because I keep introducing these things into the work process that have no place in the work process. And I don't mean to, I'm not an idiot, but I hate leaving my dog at home, and guilt and the emotional part of that is very sapping of energy. So when they talk about the brain is wired to conserve it, yeah, okay. Not really.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think going back to the growth mindset, like if you learn from that and maybe you look at it, well, if I'm and cause I get it, cause I've got dogs too, but like if you get done with and sometimes like I have to let them out, or there are some things that just come with that where I'd be more efficient without a dog, but they bring a lot of intangibles but I like, and I think we all have these things that come into our lives, whether it's family or friends or distractions. But if we could realize that if we're just super focused and efficient doing our one thing, going back to Gary Keller, that we're going to finish earlier. And that's what I try to keep in the back of my mind. All right, when I'm done, and I can leave this alone, and then I want to walk the dogs or go walk the wife or whatever the thing is, if we're more efficient and we have more time for that. That's kind of the beauty of this. Like I used to kind of think like you, Jen, that you just got to work just more hours, but you can work more hours, but you don't necessarily have to. You can become more efficient and get what you need to get done, and then free up more time. So
Right.
Yeah, I like that. All right, I guess let's go over the last section of this chapter. It's the subheading is prime the environment for future use, which, man, I'm gonna admit I still struggle with this. Like I tripped a couple of months ago, like I tripped over like something because I didn't reset to 0 and I fell and I scuffed up my knee. Like what you said, I felt stupid, but all right. Oswald Nichols is an IT developer from Natchez, Mississippi. He is also someone who understands the power of priming his environment. Nichols dialed in his cleaning habits by following a strategy he refers to as resetting the room. Kind of sounds like reset to 0. I see what you did, Chris. For instance, when he finishes watching television, he places the remote back on the TV stand arranges the pillows on the couch, and folds the blanket. When he leaves his car, he throws any trash away. Whenever he takes a shower, he wipes down the toilet while the shower is warming up. By the way, that's habit stacking. As he notes, the perfect time to clean the toilet is right before you wash yourself in the shower anyway. That's pretty sound logic. The purpose of resetting each room is not simply to clean up after the last action, but to prepare for the next action. When I walk into a room, everything is in its right place, Knuckles wrote. Because I do this every day in every room, stuff always stays in good shape. People think I work hard, but I'm actually really lazy. I'm just proactively lazy. It gives you so much time back. Whenever you organize a space for its intended purpose, you are priming it to make the next action easy. For instance, my wife keeps a box of greeting cards that are pre-sorted by occasion, birthday, sympathy, wedding, graduation, and more. Whenever necessary, she grabs an appropriate card and sends it off. She is incredibly good at remembering to send cards because she has reduced the friction of doing so. For years, I was the opposite. Someone would have a baby and I would think, I should send a card. But then weeks would pass, and by the time I remembered to pick up one at the store, it was too late. The habit wasn't easy. There are many ways to prime your environment so it's ready for immediate use. If you want to cook a healthy breakfast, place the skillet on the stove. Set the cooking spray on the counter and lay out any plates and utensils you need the night before. When you wake up, making breakfast will be easy. Want to draw more? Put your pencils, pens, notebooks, and drawing tools on the top of your desk within easy reach. Want to exercise? Set out your workout clothes, shoes, gym bag, and water bottle ahead of time. Want to improve your diet? Chop up a ton of fruits and veggies on weekends and pack them in containers so you have easy access to healthy, ready-to-eat options during the week. And my wife and I, we actually did this yesterday. We meal prepped for the first time yesterday, and it made today easy for lunch. So that's a good one I implemented. These are simple ways to make the good habit the path of least resistance. You can also invert this principle and prime the environment to make bad behaviors difficult. If you find yourself watching too much TV, for example, then unplug it after each use. Yikes. Only plug it back in if you can say out loud the name of the show you want to watch. This setup creates just enough friction to prevent mindless viewing. If that doesn't do it, you can take it a step further. Unplug the TV and take the batteries out of the remote after each use, so it takes an extra 10 seconds to turn it back on. And if you're really hardcore, move the TV out of the living room and into a closet after each use. You can be sure you'll only take it out when you really want to watch something. The greater the friction, the less likely the habit. Whenever possible, I'll leave my phone in a different room until lunch. Now that's a big one. That's a big one. When it's right next to me, I'll check it all morning for no reason at all. And we talked about this with a dopamine hit previously. But when it is in another room, I rarely think about it. And the friction is high enough that I won't go get it without a reason. As a result, I get 3 to 4 hours each morning when I can work without interruption. If sticking your phone in another room doesn't seem like enough, tell a friend or family member to hide it from you for a few hours. Ask a coworker to keep it at their desk in the morning and give it back to you at lunch. It is remarkable how little friction is required to prevent unwanted behavior. When I hide a beer in the back of the fridge where I can't see it, I drink less. When I delete social media apps from my phone, it can be weeks before I download them again and log in. These tricks are unlikely to curb a true addiction, but for many of us, a little bit of friction can be the difference between sticking with a good habit or sliding into a bad one. Imagine the cumulative impact of making dozens of these changes and living in an environment designed to make the good behaviors easier and the bad behaviors harder. And I think that's the key. Like that's one of the key takeaways, the cumulative effect of dozens of these changes. Whether we are approaching behavior change as an individual, a parent, a coach, or a leader, we should ask ourselves the same question. How can we design a world where it's easy to do what's right? Redesign your life so the actions that matter most are the actions that are easiest to do. And it gives the chapter summary Human behavior follows the law of least effort. We will naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. Create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Reduce the friction associated with good behaviors. When friction is low, habits are easy. Increase the friction associated with bad behaviors. When friction is high, habits are difficult. And basically reset to zero was the last key point there. All right. Anybody got any thoughts on that last section, the priming the environment?
Yeah, I just think it's not that easy to do. It sounds good, but it takes a lot of work. That's what I know.
All right, so
Like-
give me an
like
example.
Well, like your phone. I mean, you're using it I'm using it for photos. So you can't really put it in the other room, then I download the stuff on there. So you really need to hide it or, not to look at it. It is, like they said, a little bit addicting. So it's just paying more attention because if you don't have a plan, you just end up looking at something and wasting time.
So what does your schedule look like, Susan, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a free schedule. That's why.
There's the problem.
Yeah, it partly is. I help my parents. I have to do some stuff for them. So yeah, I'm trying to do stuff in the morning, but if they want me to do something, then I go help them. So it's flexible, I guess. But I did one thing though that did help. Isaiah, and a couple of weeks ago on the call, you mentioned he was timing each listing, and I started doing that the other day after I watched the call. It really did make a difference, just individually, just timing some of them, because then you have a reason to increase your speed.
Yeah, that's good. And I think because like where your mind is, like your energy will follow. So if you're timing yourself, then you're consciously probably thinking about ways to get faster. And I know for me, like I also use my phone for photographs, and I know when I have my phone in, all right, and I'm guilty of this too. Like I normally have my phone with me, like while I'm shipping in the morning, and I'm getting notifications, it's my family texting and whatnot. And sometimes I resist, and sometimes I don't. I check it, and I know it's sidetracking me. And like this morning, I forgot my phone in my car after I got my items from the storage unit. And I noticed how much faster my shipping was this morning because the phone wasn't next to me to distract me. So maybe for me, it is leave the phone in the other room until it's time to photograph. And I know like when I'm photographing, if I get a notification, like sometimes I'll check it, sometimes I don't. But I did see the difference it made. Tech?
So you guys know I have people that work for me and do the listings. So would you guys say it would be a wise decision if I would let them take photographs on the phone, seeing as that is a distraction?
Exactly. I understand. If I'm paying someone, I probably would have a different decision, honestly. Because when I was supervising a bunch of employees, I didn't allow the phone on the floor. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Tech. And you've mentioned this before, like we're stealing from ourselves because whatever goals we're trying to do, like we know listings per minute is where the money comes out. And like what Jim was talking about, if you want to finish earlier, you want to be as productive as possible to get those done.
Framing it like that to you guys and saying, should I let my employees take pictures on their phones? Everyone shook their head no.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to audiobooks all day, and I'll tell you, every time I get a text or a ping or an eBay sale or mom calls, and I don't pick up the phone, but I hear it, I stop what I'm doing just to see who it was. That in and of itself, if I added that up, it would end up being some significant time, because inevitably after that one small interruption that happens 25 times a day, I end up, my brain does the squirrel thing and goes to something else. And then I got to pull myself right back into what I was doing. So even just the fact that phone made a sound is enough to get me off track in a far bigger way than just the sound itself. I actually, maybe I should shut my phone off during the day. I sometimes have the Zoom room on and I'm listening to what they're saying. And I have to say, there's times when 3 or 4 times I went over to say something. I'm like, shut up, Jen, just leave it alone. Do your work. And I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to use the Zoom room as a distraction. I don't even know. I had it on there because I wanted it to keep me working. That's why I had it on.
Mhm.
But the minute I start participating in the calls, which isn't a bad thing because I love it, I realized that's taking me away from why I'm in the room in the first place.
Yeah, no, I was listening to the podcast, the One Thing podcast, the same as the book, and they were talking about that they've actually measured the time that you lose, because when you get distracted, it's not just the time you lose. Like, you don't go exactly back to the exact point you were. Like, if you got to kind of figure out where I'm at, and then to get in that flow. And I think he said it was like 27% loss in time from task switching, and that adds up a lot.
That's very true.
So, all right, so phones seem to be a big friction point for us, or a lot of people.
What does everybody do to prepare for the morning call? I'm curious what people's routines are before the morning call. Because for me, it starts at 6 a.m. So I have my 7 or 8 things that I need to do before the call starts. But if I have roller skating that day, my skates better be in the car, and I better have my workout gear ready because I'm going to need to change into it. So I've got my routine for that. So I'm curious what other people's routines are to get their day started.
Well, my problem is it starts at the call's at 6, so I barely wake up. I get up at 6, so I don't. Yeah, I make breakfast for people, but yeah, it's helpful. I think it could be later, but it's what it is. So
for me, it's 9 o'clock my time, so I've already been up, gotten one of my kids up, gotten him off to school. I come back home, launch my drafts. And then I do one stupid little thing, but it's like my trigger every day that I'm about to go into the call and start working, which is I play that game Wordle. And it takes like not even 2 minutes, and it fulfills whatever part of my brain that is that likes doing games on my phone. And then I don't have to play a game on my phone all day. I did that. It took less than 2 minutes. The call starts and I work.
Yeah, that's an interesting trigger. I play it too. I save it for the end of the day. It's like a reward, but I like that you're using a trigger to start the call. Like mine is coffee, like in my coffee already.
Oh, I'm already on at least my second cup by then.
Yeah.
My day is really easy. 3 a.m., wake up, get coffee. 3:15, start listing. By 5:30, I'm done with all my listings, and then I start packaging for shipping. And then the call. And then finishing the packaging and shipping.
Wow. At 3 a.m. Can I ask why you start so early? I'm just curious.
Because I'm usually in bed by 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. So I just wake up between 2 and 3.
No, I think that's ideal. Like if you're up that early, because your brain's at max capacity. So to do the most important thing when you're freshest mentally, that I wish I could do that. I have to do shipping. Like I get up between 5 to 6, and then I go to the storage unit, pull the orders, come in, make coffee. While the coffee's brewing, I stretch, and then I come in here and I ship. And if I'm not sourcing, I'm shipping during the morning call. Like this morning, on days I do go sourcing, I can't make the call because I have to be there when they open to have first crack at the best inventory. And then, well, I take that back. Actually, before I ship, I do all my customer service and coupons and offers to likers and promoted listings and customer service. Then I ship. And
I set up my coupons on the weekend to run during the week at certain times. Same with my sales and things. Because that's the days I sleep until 5.
Sleeping until 5.
Well, when you have a roommate and a bunch of animals around, you do it when it's the most quiet.
No, it's impressive. I like it. Thought people ask me, how do you get up at 5 and go to work? I'm like, right, 3? That's really impressive.
The
Sheila,
Army trains me well.
there you go.
I like to roll over and just set up my drafts. As soon as I open my eyes in the morning, I want to pump out the listings before I even roll out of the bed.
So you're launching drafts from your phone. I'm taking it.
Yeah, I work full time, so I take like Saturday and Sunday to really hone in on pumping up my draft bank to like 40, 50. And then during the mornings, as soon as I open my eyes, I send out my 8 per day. This past week, I had a lot more toys than I anticipated, so I put up a little bit extra. But I have to have my draft bank so that way, as soon as I open my eyes, the drafts go live, and then I go on to my regular, boring full-time job.
I like that. Good way to wake up the store. Let's see. Kim says she goes to sleep at 2 a.m. So Kim's going to sleep right before Sheila wakes up. Melissa's, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like the beautiful thing about eBay is that we can adjust our schedules to whatever our lives, whatever we're dealing with. And there's not a lot of jobs that have that flexibility. And I think, but if we're not careful, this is bringing it back to habits, right? If we have too much freedom, I think like Susan was talking about, that can be a trap. Like I have a friend that's a horrible trap. Like, come on, man, you need to read this book. You need to get with the program. But because like for me at this point, most of my days are just one big habit stack. Like I don't have to think about it. And then I get to the end of the day where I used to be exhausted and I'd have to work till later in the evening to get less done than I'm doing now. And I was mentally spent. Like I was exhausted. I just wanted to go to sleep or lay on the couch. Now, I'm usually finished by 5. Today was a little bit later, 6, because I went sourcing, but I have plenty of brain power. Like I'm more present to do hobbies or just to hang with the family or whatever I'm doing. And I think that's very valuable too. Going back to what he was talking about, lazy, right? Like if we can make our eBay listings as easy as possible, like I think about Tech and Sell Similar and how fast he is, like the easier it is, we can get more done and or finish earlier and then have energy and time to do other things if we want. Kim says, I'm still up by 7 because my son has to go to school. Way more efficient at night than during the day, though. Going to do a photo block from midnight to 2 a.m. while everyone else is sleeping. Yeah. All right, Belle, Scott, any thoughts? I think like my big takeaway is we want to make our positive habits as easy as possible. And we talked about like Jen's rolling chair or, trying to like tech pivots, the photograph and pivot, resetting to 0, like all these things that Tech and Chris have talked about a lot. Like they're all, it's always interesting. Like a lot of it's coming from this chapter is just reinforcing what those best practices that they're using. And then what are some bad habits that we want to add friction to prevent? Because ultimately it's not the habit, like they said in this chapter, it's not the habit, it's the result. So whatever our listing habit, I think, is the most important thing. And like for me now, I'm at 30 a day. Now I'm going to slow it down and try to increase 1 per week or and see how that goes as long as I'm still finishing and building the draft bank. Like, what are we trying to achieve with our habits? And what are our bad habits costing us? I guess is maybe something we can think about. And I know for me, like phone, like I saw that today when I forgot my phone in the car. Like I think until it's at least time for photography, I need to leave it alone. Then I used to have a big DSLR camera. I know Jen, you I don't know if you still use it. You used to use it. Took amazing photos, but like the shutter speed on the maybe the answer is to get a second phone where it's nothing but there's nothing on there but just eBay and the camera.
Yeah, I have I'm a music director at my church, and I run my church services with an old iPhone 7 Pro Plus. And I put the church music on there, have a Bluetooth speaker system set up, and run everything through there. And, we're talking about 15, 16 pieces in the course of the service. And that's all it's for. I've shut off cell phone service. It's do not disturb. There's no notifications. There's no web access. It's just for the music. So why not do one if you really love taking with the phone, and the photos are fabulous. I mean, they're better than my camera. I just can't stand the upside down thing because I do flat lay once in a while. Just dedicate an old phone, and an old phone. If you're upgrading, keep the old one. Just don't trade it in.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right. Well, maybe just think about that. Positive habits, reduce friction. Negative habits, bad habits, try to add some friction. All right. So next week, chapter 13, how to stop procrastinating using the 2-minute rule. That should be interesting.
Yeah, okay.
We'll deal with procrastination next week. Can't wait to hear.
Big topic.
And others' thoughts on this. All right. Well, thanks for all the interaction tonight, everybody that interacted, and thanks everyone for joining the call.
You might have to do an extra hour next week, Brian.
Why is that? Oh, or maybe we need to start an hour later. Procrastinating.
Yeah, maybe we'll start 15 minutes late and then make it go like 2 hours later.
That's funny. I like it. All right. Well, thanks, Christine. Yeah, thanks everyone for showing up. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see.